My name is Peter, recovered alcoholic, and grateful to be here. Before we get going, I want to thank Roger. I'm used to calling him Mickey Mantle. Roger for all the taping and Rick for putting this thing together. And want to thank all of you folks for hanging in there. It's a long day. But thanks for hanging in there and pretending you're interested in what we have to say. I'm also, last night I said the Flies were Red Sox fans, but after observing these Flies attacking me all day, I'm convinced they're from Philly. I'll tell you why. Because I swat one away and three come back and say, try it again. June 23rd, 1988 is when God separated me from alcohol. I have a home group, and I do have a sponsor. I sponsor probably too many guys, to be honest with you, 10 of them. And I have a handful of new guys. And, you know, the new guys, you have like 17 personalities in that new guy. So I don't know who's going to call me at any given moment. But God has kept me on the firing life. My job is to talk about 10 and 11. I just want to start this with a prayer. So I can get centered and hopefully listen to what he has to tell me. And it's from an author who I'm in love with, and I try to study him as much as possible. By no means an expert. It says, "My Lord God, I have no idea where I am going. I do not see the road ahead of me. I cannot know for certain where it will end, nor do I really know myself. And the fact that I think I am following your will does not mean that I'm actually doing so. But I believe that the desire to please you does in fact please you. And I have the desire in all that I am doing. I hope that I will never do anything apart from that desire. And I know that if I do this, you will lead me by the right road, though I may not know nothing about it. Therefore, I will trust you always. Though I may seem lost and in the shadow of death, I will not fear, for you are ever with me, and you will never leave me to face my perils alone." I need to practice this fidelity to God. And in so doing, I get to experience God's fidelity to me. I need to be faithful to my practice, and I will find and experience the practice will be faithful to me. And I'm not only referring to the practice of prayer and meditation, but the tentacles that has. My practice could be waking up early every day, and not 11 o'clock one day, 2 o'clock one day, 9 o'clock the next day, being faithful, being disciplined to a practice. Perhaps it's reading, which I do a lot of. I practice that faithfully. I spend time each day with a busy day in a practice of sitting down in silence and reading spiritual literature. And not just for information, because I learned a long time ago, I don't read spiritual books, I get to work with them, but seeking a transformation. And not so I can get up here and throw something at you that I know nothing about, but it sounds really good, but to come at you experientially with it. And very often I want to look around the corner, as I said last night, and see what's coming, but God won't permit that. And so what I'm resigned to is hopefully pleasing God in all that I do, and I know sometimes I don't perhaps please Him if I get involved with my own mind. But I think overall in my efforts every day, and I do none of this perfect, trust me, in my efforts every day into seeking God first and having conscious contact with God, that'll lead me by the right road when it all is said and done. Because what I'm also convinced of, as real as this feels, and the efforts we make to improve, I make to improve myself, and cleaning up old scrapes, and having good relationships, and making money to take care of me and my wife, and doing things like that, it really is a pit stop. We're here but just a vapor. This isn't the end of the road. Because when I get to the end of this road, I find a whole new road to walk on. So what does it look like while I'm here? And what I've learned, I can tell you experientially, that all this work we get to do speaks loudly for the power that really can't be spoken about. Some of our speakers have talked a whole bunch about the experience they had, the miracles they had, and try to articulate that with words all referring to the same power. And your conception of that power might be different than yours, it might be different than mine, but point to the same power. But when we put all our stories together, and I throw my story in there, and we get all of AA stories, and we put them in together, and we talk about the miracles and all the things about this power, they still can't speak for that power because there are no words. So what I need to do is understand that God is always beyond my cleverest plans, and that in seeking this God, he's going to bring death to every identity that doesn't come from him. Am I willing to have the tree pruned that far? Because when we talk about entering the world of the Spirit, I can tell you experientially, looks nothing like I planned. You know, I came in here having had a spiritual awakening. I had a vision of what that was going to look like. Looks nothing like it. And I thought I was going to experience certain type of feelings, certain type of awakenings. None of that happened. Because God takes me where he's going to take me, in a place that I cannot comprehend with my own mind. And I'm sure many of us can relate to it. Perhaps you're giving a talk, or maybe you're working with the sponsee, and stuff starts to flow out that you know is not from you. That's what we're talking about. I'm going to get this sponsee, and this is the way the fifth step's going to look like when they start talking about certain topics, and it looks nothing like that because it's a different place that you come from, a place of grace. When I get to live in spirit, inspired. And it begins by cleaning up me and my life, because I can't enter the world of the Spirit still traveling with yesterday. How could I live now knowing how I lived then? How could I move forward? I'm still dragged by the past. So what Jimmy talked about is cleaning up the wreckage of our past. I'm able to step into this thing called the world of the Spirit. That cannot, my experience, I can't understand that with my mind. It never will. My ego wants to wrap its hands around this world of the Spirit, but it's incapable of doing so. It can only be experienced. We can talk a whole lot about God, but we need to experience God. It's the only way we get to know this God. So many times over the years, when I'm least expecting it, God has given me one of those God winks and transforms my life again. So I'm working with prayer, meditation twice a day. There were times I was doing it 3 times a day. This was what I was moved to do. And doing all this stuff and writing the inventory and sharing with the sponsor and working with others. And I'm going to meditation. All I'm getting is simple silence. I must be doing something wrong. And I go into meditation one day and something happens. Or perhaps I get up off the mat after meditation and I'm doing something and God speaks to my heart and drops something on my heart. I go, inspiration again. But the ground stays fertile. So step 10, if I put together AA, it would look this way. You know, we read how it works, a lot of meetings, especially beginners meetings, and I would just love to sit down with a newcomer who's really new, not has a lot of information that's in the way now, but really new, who can't get away from a drink but wants to, who's never been able to get sober but wants to right now, and that ground is really fertile. If we sat down with a newcomer and read the 10-step promises that this is what you're in for, that this thinking about a drink, this obsession with drinking will be removed. Not that you have to fight it every day. It will be removed, completely removed. And at the beginning, that's like a huge cross off your back. How much freedom can we experience when this main problem that we're having, drink, is removed? In fact, we can go even further. And the book is so bold that I can get recovered from alcoholism. It's unbelievable. And what it says is this: we cease fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. It's almost an afterthought. Because when I first got to Alcoholics Anonymous, I'm not drinking, I'm sober, but I'm at war with a lot of things. I'm having trouble in personal relationships. I'm not even getting off my couch because most of it was inward wars, all up in the head. I'm wrestling with my past and I'm afraid of my future, and I am not free, although they're applauding me for getting 60 days and 90 days and 6 months, and I'm thinking, it must be good, but I don't feel okay. So now I'm looking to feel good all the time, and quickly I start to worship my emotions, and I'm seeking comfort all the time. So I'm trying to do things to make me feel good, which means I'm in charge again. And down the rabbit hole I go and I can't get out, yeah? And another surrender happens, and I get back to Brooklyn, I get this sponsor, we begin going through the work, and I'm being made uncomfortable a lot, really uncomfortable, a complete upheaval, this revolution, this transformation, and it's getting ripped down. The whole structure had to go. The death of self is successful living. The death of self before the physical death. It wasn't about just memorizing some stuff in the book and just doing homework assignments, but it was about being reborn from within. And little by slowly, I've had my moments of, character assassination, sitting in a meeting or at home, but I've gotten this distance away from it overall, and I travel a lot lighter than I ever did because I cease fighting anyone. What begins to happen is an undercurrent of okayness no matter what's going on in my life. And I've had lots of challenges on this journey since I got sober. A lot of career challenges, a lot of financial challenges, just a lot of challenges that would be met with fear and anxiety and skepticism and doubt, and I'm blaming people and uncomfortability and the if-only story. If only it went this way, I'd be okay. And then the spirit awakens and I start to operate out of the soul. Yeah, I start to operate out of the soul, and there's a shift. That adversity happens and something, it's coupled with, it's going to be okay, I gotcha. I don't know how I'm going to be okay. I don't know when I'm going to be okay. I just know I'm going to be okay. And over again, God has delivered that. My feet always landed on the ground. Never been crushed or burned. And all God asked me to do is put on His armor, so I'm protected, God's armor, and go out there and stay on the firing line and work with somebody. Be of service to Alcoholics Anonymous, be of service to people out there. It's easy to talk about God. It's easy to talk about my prayer life. It's easy to talk about me doing all the things I do in AA. The heavy lifting is really living God's will for me. Because often my experience has been God's will for me conflicts with my will for me. In fact, I will look at someone who's following God's will. I would look at someone having this spiritual awakening. I would hear about the miracles in AA and say, that's beautiful, coupled with, but I don't want to do what they did to get there. I look at God's will. I like my will a little bit more. I like God's will, but I don't like His will in money and sex. I think I'm going to leave that one to me. How much of a surrender am I willing to go for? I want to surrender a little bit just to get comfortable, just take the heat off, but I still want to drive the bus. The great thing is a lot of the pruning of the tree has been done, and my experience is by the time I get to 10, I got traction. And there's not really much I have to do. A lot of the heavy lifting has been done. It's not about maintaining, that means staying, but caring for the soul. I love the effect produced by God. It's not an effort for me to pray and meditate anymore. In fact, I spend a lot of times in sacred silence away from the 11th step. If I'm home on the weekend, I usually take part of my Saturday to practice sacred silence. Just be still and enjoy those kind of moments. I'm an early riser. I'm up at 5 regularly, very often earlier than that. And sometimes I just wake up and I'm wide awake. There's no trouble. There's no anxiety. I just wake up and I'm ready to go. And sometimes with a full day's work, I want to roll over and go catch another hour's sleep. And I couldn't do it. And I enjoyed the sacred silence. And very often God would drop something on me. Not to change the planet, not to come in here and elaborate on stuff, but just to give me a shift. For the most part, I would love to report to you I'm perfect with this, but for the most part, I cease fighting anything or anyone, which is a far cry from when I first got in here. You know, one of the proofs of this, when I was growing up, my dad and I never got along. I was convinced he hated me, and I didn't like him. I didn't like what he belonged to. I didn't like that lifestyle. He was the alpha male, the tough guy from South Brooklyn. He belonged with type of folks, and I'm into hippies and music. And we conflicted a lot. My mom would get in the middle of that. And then my illness just takes over my life, and we were so far apart, just so far apart. And would be him screaming at me and me putting my fist through a wall and taking off. That was our relationship. And I would sit in treatment and sit in therapy groups, and my father this and my father that and my father this and my dad, and just go on and on and on. And how much I just wanted to, if he wasn't my dad, I'd just square off with him. And then I go through this work and things begin to happen. A shift in perceptions, yeah? A shift in perceptions. And I thought about this. I would sit with this. Oh, God just dropped it on me that my dad was in his early 30s when he had to bury his wife. Stuck with 3 boys who were young. What an order I can't go through with. I know a lot of tough guys who would have booked. My mom was sick. She had mental health issues. She was an addict, full-blown alcoholic, in and out of psych wards, multiple suicide attempts, and he hung in there. I suddenly had a shift in perceptions with my dad with great reverence and respect, and still raised 3 boys. And I thought about the lifestyle. Well, he grew up penniless. His parents were immigrants. They had nothing. And the way to make money was to turn to the street. You didn't go to school. How could I fault him for that? And I never denied us anything. Always had food on the table and new clothes. Christmas toys at every Christmas. Even if he had to go out and steal, we made sure he had toys under the tree for Christmas. How could I be angry with a man like this? And when I found myself as loving him and respecting him and holding him in the highest esteem, the highest regard, and I wasn't having trouble in that, I ceased fighting him. And I was angry with my mom for so long for not getting sober, not getting the right mental health. And how could she take her life and leave me and my brothers alone with my dad? How could she do that? Then I get sober, and I'm brought into the treatment center field. And for the last 30-something years, I've been working on that firing line with addicts and alcoholics and mental health folks and co-occurring folks. And I started to see the broken vessels that were coming in. And a lot of the women, I would see my mom, and I asked, how could I be angry with my mom? I couldn't. And I was brought to a spirit of forgiveness. One of the greatest things I can walk with nowadays in this so-called world of the Spirit is living with the spirit of forgiveness. I may not like what you're doing. I may vehemently disagree with what you're doing, and I have to separate from you. But at some point, I need to forgive you. If I truly am telling you I'm living in the world of the Spirit, it's easy to talk about God. It's easy to recite this big book. It's easy to read an author and come back here and report it to you. What does it look like live for me when you're not around? What does it look like when I'm praying in silence? I'm on my knees and I'm Moses and I get up, I turn into Rambo. What does it really look like? It says, I vigorously commenced this way of living as I cleaned up the past. That's a condition. How could I enter the world of the Spirit when I owe the world an amends? How could I enter the world of the Spirit when I have anchors around my knees from my ankles from yesterday? I can't. I want to, but I can't. It's impossible. I can't be present to that while I'm still driven by the voices of the past. How much time do I give communing with God in sacred silence? Just turning in order to go out. Because if I don't turn in, I'll go without. It says, I've entered the world of the Spirit. That's not free room and board. There's some things I need to do. My next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. Now, I'll never understand God, but I need to understand the path He's put me on. What am I here for? I mean, I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. Now what? And it's a short ride through this life. Even if God keeps me here till 100, it's a short ride. What am I doing? Wrestling with folks? Wrestling with people out there? Yeah? Or am I seeking God, and what does He need for me to do? Whatever it might be home, might be chores today at home. It might be doing the best job at work I can do. It might be hearing the fifth step. This, for me, this world of the Spirit just doesn't apply to Alcoholics Anonymous and hearing fifth steps all day long. Anyone can do that. Just sit and listen. What does it look like live when you're not around, when I'm out there, when I'm in traffic, when I'm in the grocery store, when Marion's having a difficult day, when her children are acting up and she gets sad and weeps? How am I right there? That's really living in the world of the Spirit, when I can bring compassion and love and understanding and tolerance to others. Or that newcomer who comes in and is completely inappropriate. Love and tolerance is our code. The tolerance is understanding I was just like that. And instead of throwing them out, sitting down and saying, we don't do that here. This is how we're going to do this. I know some folks who are tradition folks. You break a tradition, they want to ban you from AA. They don't pull you over and say, this is how we do it in AA. Don't do that anymore. Got it. That's real tolerance and love. It's called living in the world of the Spirit. None of this is possible, first, on my own power, and my experience has been none of this is possible if I don't remedy some of the things in 1 through 9. No? Well, I'm not doing it for my glory, but I'm not doing this so I serve my cause. I'm doing it to serve God's cause. I'm content with being a spoke in a wheel. I don't need to be the wheel. Just a spoke in a wheel, and I go wherever the driver takes me. And that's really cool. It says, I continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. It tells me it's not an overnight matter, and it tells me it should continue for a lifetime. That's a powerful statement. Am I willing to commit my life, the rest of it, to this process, to this way of life? Because God really thinks you mean it. I'm in for the long haul, whatever that means. And if I'm in for the long haul, life being so problematic and unfair, it's going to be the peaks and valleys now and again. Suddenly the money is scarce. Suddenly the money is in abundance. Sometimes the relationship is rocky. Sometimes the relationship is doing good. How do I navigate through that? Because it's going to happen to many of us. Newcomers, welcome to the NFL. It's going to happen. And the mind is always looking to take me back to a drink, and it'll set up with a new relationship, a whole bunch of money, no money. It'll do whatever it can to get me back to a drink. And if I'm going to listen to my mind, I'm still in bondage. And it's torture. Or do I want to trust this soul? And it's scary listen to the soul at the beginning because it's a foreign language. And I want to know where I'm going. It's the blind faith. My inventory is to look for my selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear, because it's going to happen. It's not like I get to step 10 and suddenly I'm beyond reproach. Suddenly I'm pure as the driven snow. It means I'm flawed and broken. I'm subject to break down at any moment. And I have inventory to keep me back in the saddle. I do none of this perfect. And I think I shared last night with a tremendous amount of freedom to know I don't need to be perfect. It's the spirituality of imperfection. But I do know this, if spirituality doesn't touch every single area of my life, it touches none of my life, because my alcoholism permeated every single area of my life. Not some of my life, and this part was manageable. Every part of my life was hit by alcoholism, was owned by alcoholism. And when I come in here, I can't pick and choose where I'm going to be spiritual or not. I need to surrender all things, everything. What I do for a living, who I'm going to be with, where I live, how much money I want to put my hands on that. It's none of my business. I heard there's an old timer who's passed on, and he said something, and it just got my attention. And I wasn't sure I agreed with it. It was so powerful. And the more I sat with it, it was dead on. And he said something like this, that my job is to not take care of me. I said, what? See, the spiritual life contradicts everything I've been told my whole life. It contradicts everything in the mind. Your job is to not take care of yourself. That's God's job. Because anytime I take care of myself, I'm looking for comfort. I'm looking for the easiest off the way. I want life as I see it. That's God's job. My job is to seek God. That's my job. Any lengths to seek God. When things are good, when things aren't so good. Whether I'm sitting, I get to do this a lot. This is where God has me. And it's slippery up here. Because you can get attached to doing this. And this is my program. This should be, these 2 talks I do should be a reflection of what I've been doing yesterday, the day before, the day before, the day before that, and the day before that. I'm just here to report to you. As my sponsor, just have a conversation with folks about where you are. But if God said to me, no more speaking, no more speaking. In fact, you're going to sit in the back of the room. You're going to work with people, go to meetings, do all those good things. But you're going to be relatively unknown and not very popular. You're going to sit in the back of the room. A few people will wave to you. You won't have the line at the end of the meeting saying, thank you for sharing. But sitting back there where I want to put you, as a relatively unknown in AA, you will experience all of my glory. That's the contract. Or you can continue doing this and struggle. I must confess, I'm taking the back seat. I'm going to sit in the back of the room to experience that kind of freedom and that kind of glory rather than doing this and experiencing struggle. That's where I'm currently at. I enjoy doing this. I like talking about the good news. But I don't need to. I can sit with the drunk and pass on the good news. The good news that was brought to me. 10-step promises. We cease fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol, for by this time sanity will return. We were looking for sanity in 2, and they deliver the contract here. Sanity, truth, in the solution, one with God. Can't get drunk on that. Not when I'm wearing God's armor. I'll always get drunk on a lie, which my mind is always feeding me, even right now. I finished giving a talk on 10 and 11. I'll walk out into the parking lot and the mind's still going. Do you ever have this? Whatever time you wake up, for me it's about 5 o'clock. You open up your eyes, and at 5:01, you're in the middle of an argument with somebody who died 20 years ago. Did you ever wake up pissed off? 8 hours sleep in a beautiful bed, a beautiful apartment, the money's good, the house is good, the relationship good, everything's good, new car outside, everything's good, and wake up really angry at somebody. Because the mind just doesn't stop. And because I walk into Alcoholics Anonymous and go through the steps and have a spiritual awakening as the result of the 12 steps, suddenly I think my mind's going to stop talking. No. In fact, although there's no proximity between me and God, but just as a figure of speech, the closer I get to God, the louder the mind's going to scream. Satan don't want me in there. We'll put up roadblocks, create distractions to block me from that truth. My illness, my mind wants me nowhere in the neighborhood of God. So it's going to scream louder. A gentleman who's passed on from my neighborhood in Florida, we had a running joke, 10 minutes, I'll call him Joe, 10 minutes with Joe, you don't need a meeting for a month. He was just oozed God and devoutly religious. And he shared a story. He says he was in Mass one day and it was a beautiful service. The priest gave a beautiful talk, a homily. And he made his communion. And right after communion, if anyone's a Catholic here, that prayer is important. And he's just feeling, oh my God, it's so beautiful to be here. And in this place, she walked by. And he went right to the gutter in a hot second. And when the service finally ended, the priest usually waits outside and shakes hands, and people want to get blessed and things like that. And he found himself walking, she was smoking a cigarette and suddenly had a need to smoke a cigarette where she was. We see that in AA a lot too. Yeah. And as he was walking there, that little voice says something like, "What are you doing?" But he shared that story with me, how slippery and sneaky and devious this mind is. Why do we tell people in AA, bring the body and the mind will follow? I don't know about you, but I don't want anybody's mind coming to my house. I don't want to hear my mind. We tell newcomers, think it through, things like that. It's a form of self and self-reliance, which is deadly. If tempted, I recoil from it as from a hot flame. I react sanely and normally and find this has happened automatically. This is the thing. I don't have to think about it. I have to play the tape through. I don't have to keep it green, remember where I come from. This is done automatically as the result of awakening, because I've had a spiritual awakening here. In step 10, I've had that awakening. 11 is about growing and understanding effectiveness, enhancing the experience, really going all the way into the fall, surrendering more, experience God's abundance, and 12 was about passing this on and practicing principles in all my affairs. But this is it. How free do I want to be is what one of my sponsors used to tell us. He would tell us, go to an ocean with a thimble, come home with a thimble full of water, and God's given you the whole thing, and I settle for so little. Okay, I'm comfortable now. I go to God to free me of drinking, but I find myself going to other places to seek comfort. I don't take it back to God. I go to God to relieve me of this bondage of alcohol when I get in here. And I go to other places for financial reward, for relationships, for comfort. I find myself going down dark alleys. God forbid I should turn back to that same power who got me free of this monster. So what I turn into in Alcoholics Anonymous is a hypocrite. And I don't even know it. Because alcoholism, it tells me, is a subtle foe. Sly, clever, devious, and difficult to detect, and my personal enemy. It's got his eyes on me, and seems that I run 10 feet, and it's right behind me. And the only thing that's going to keep me from getting hooked into alcoholism is this power called God. I need to be experiencing more of God. I need to be talking more about God. I need to be living more in the sunlight of the Spirit. I need to be telling sponsees more about God. Guys, I got to tell you, I go to a lot of conferences, and sometimes I hear 4, 5, 6, 8 speakers over a weekend, and I can count on a couple of fingers how many of those speakers talk abundantly about God. A lot of funny stories. A lot of nice little packages, put the ribbon on it. I'm so spiritual, and thank you for sharing. And I don't hear the G-O-D word, and I wonder why that's happening. I don't know. I'll get off my soapbox. We will see that a new attitude toward liquor has been given us without any thought or effort on our part. It just comes. This is the miracle of it. I'm not fighting it. Neither am I avoiding temptation. I feel as though I've been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. I have not even sworn off, and here it is. It's almost borders on arrogant. The problem has been removed. The big book saying that problem will be removed. And we can experientially tell a newcomer the problem's been removed. Imagine sitting with a new guy or a new woman and they're rocking and rolling. I can't stop drinking. And we say, this problem will be removed. What do you mean? It'll be gone. One day at a time, you'll go through there without even thinking about using. That's impossible. But I'm here to bear witness to this promise. There's a condition. I need to be spiritually fit. But I can't do a self-assessment on being spiritually fit. That's up to my sponsor, my wife, my friends, you. It's easy to let on a spiritual program of action and rest on my accomplishments of yesterday. I'm headed for trouble if I do, because alcohol is a subtle foe. I have this stay of execution that hinges on how spiritually fit I am. And they're not looking for gurus or monks, just spiritually fit, which means I sought out God today. I'm trying to carry the vision of His will into all my activities, not my will. I'm doing the best I can. And some days I'm going to go 0 for 4 and strike out 4 times. But I got into the batter's box looking to do good. That's all God wants. I didn't cash my chips in and went home. I take my ball and go home. And some days I go 4 for 4. God doesn't care about that either. But He needs soldiers for His army. There's a reason why let me be so bold, say we got sober. We celebrate in here and we speak and we have a lot of things, but there's a reason why God employed me to go get the other one and bring him in here. Or as Jimmy always says, I do one of the most powerful things I ever heard, to let the guy out there who doesn't know we're in here, that we're in here, something along those lines. I never thought about this, that there's people in the streets right now who don't even know we're here. My job is to let them know there's a place of refuge that's called Alcoholics Anonymous. If I'm not in the world of the Spirit, I don't care about those people. I got my own problems. Every day is a day I must carry the vision of God's will into all my activities. That's a doing. How can I best serve thee? Thy will not mine be done. That's a being. That's a prayer. I just want to flip over to step 11 and just talk a little bit about that and get Tommy up here. And he'll apologize for everything I've said. Or make amends for me. Okay, on awakening. This is key, how I start my day. Now, it says on awakening, begin. They're going to give me instructions what to do. Or on awakening, 6 cups of coffee, 4 Red Bulls, a carton of cigarettes, and go meditate. Go on Facebook, take a selfie. I'm meditating. On awakening, what do? I think about the 24 hours ahead. I consider my plans for the day. I can sit with meditation just with that. Because I'm thinking about my 24 hours ahead. I'm considering my plans for the day, which means it's all cerebral. It's all up in here. Well, I got to do this. I'm going to do, well, maybe I shouldn't. Well, I don't really want to do that. And the whole thing goes on. Okay, God, I'm supposed to go to work this morning. I have a staff meeting at 9 o'clock. I got some crazy clients in there. I hope to get to the gym this morning, and I want to go to a meeting and dinner with Marion. Okay, what do? Those are my plans. Now, God says, forget all of it. Just go to a meeting, take Marion for dinner. That's the most important thing today. I don't know how many times I've bumped up against God with my plans and His will. I ask God, it's a prayer, that my thinking be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, and self-seeking motives. That gets me out of the way. What's really frightening, I have to go to God and ask Him that my thinking be divorced from dishonest, self-seeking, and self-pity, which means that's how I'm about to operate today. I'm going to walk out the door full of me or full of something else. But I'm going to claim I'm spiritual. So I'm going to God before I walk out the door to get me out of the way. Because if not, I'm taking the world on. What begins to happen, if I'm not doing this work, instead of packing into the stream of life, life's coming at me. And I feel like I'm under attack. If I'm not writing an inventory, my stuff becomes more paramount than my own life, than my relationship with God, my own sobriety. And depending upon how spiritually fit I am will determine what I do when these thoughts start coming. And it kind of looks like this. If we look at that front door and we put a sheet of loose leaf paper in that front door, that door will be unaffected, open and close. Put a couple of more sheets in there, the door will be unaffected, open and close. Put 15, 20, 30 sheets of paper in that door, it's jammed. Something's in the way from it operating and working freely. Miss a couple of days of prayer and meditation, not seeking God, have a couple of resentment, no big deal. I'll make it up tonight or tomorrow. And I start to do that. It starts to accumulate. We come in here and say, I'm all jammed up. I can't connect. And then we unload about all of my stuff. I unload about all of my stuff, and the sponsor's going, it's really not that important. But it's become that important because I'm that important. Because I'm the wheel again and not the spoke. So I need to keep it clean and flowing like an aqueduct, God to me and me to you. And my sponsor always talks about pitching and catching. We've been speaking. We'll go to a meeting, say tomorrow, and you'll be speaking, I'm sitting there, and you're feeding me. It's reciprocal. It's the beautiful thing about Alcoholics Anonymous. And the more spiritually fit I am, I can appreciate all of it. I'm part of this thing, rather than have to be the person. Quite frankly, it's just a whole lot of freedom. God put one cross on my back, which I carry joyfully. That's for me. He didn't ask me to put 2 more on. There's a story about a man who was a devout Christian, and He wasn't feeling well and went to a doctor, and the doctor started running tests and more tests and more tests, and the doctor came out and gave him, "We need to talk," visit. And he says, "You have a short time to live, make arrangements." And the guy went to his priest, and he was unloading on the priest. "After all I've done for the church, after all I've done for God, how could he do this to me? And the hell with you and the church," and walked away from God and the church. And one night he's sleeping, because God seems to speak to us in dreams often. He has this dream that he's walking on this field, carrying this big cross. And he's livid about it, just furious. And he hears singing, and he looks around, and there's about thousands of people around him with the same size cross. And they're singing Christian hymns, and they're loving it, and they're walking to this destination. And he said, "I'm not doing this." Totally alcoholic guy, by the way, right? And he finds a little barn on the side of the road. He takes the cross in, and he's looking around. He finds a little saw, and he chops this cross down to nothing. And he got over on everyone. And they get to their destination, which is an edge of a cliff. And they need to cross over to paradise. And everyone laid down these large crosses and walked over. And he couldn't do it. He was stuck where he was. So very often, what I deem as burdens, my point of view, are burdens that God has put on my back, are really about to get me free. That they're there for a reason. Jimmy talked about, how do you do that? You're standing over a parent who's passed, you start talking to this guy about Alcoholics Anonymous, and then you start 12-stepping him. Or our friend, I knew who Jimmy was talking about, who ran with this motorcycle gang, does all this stuff, and there's a guy presented to him in prison, and it makes sense. I can't understand this God. When the third step says, "as we understood him," it doesn't mean I'm going to now understand God, how he operates, because then I am God. But I get to experience it. In thinking about my day may face indecision. I'm not sure which course to take. I ask God for inspiration, intuitive thought, or decision. I relax and take it easy. It says I don't struggle. The reason why I struggle is because I'm trying to get my hands on my life again. The reason why I'm struggling because I don't think the outcome's going to go my way. The reason why I'm struggling is I know what the answer is. I know what the solution is, but there's a part of me that doesn't want to let go. I'm struggling with greed. I'm struggling with lust. I'm struggling with envy. I'm struggling with sloth. I know what the solution is, but I don't want to let that go. I kind of dig it a little. There's a payoff to it. I really don't want to let it go. And I delude myself by praying, say, I want to let this go, but I really don't. I haven't run out of road yet, so I'm stuck with it until I run out of road. And it's a true surrender. Not a surrender where I stroke my ego. It says, it also talks about how we're often surprised how the right answers come. At the beginning, you go, oh my God, I can't believe it. It gets to a point where we're no longer surprised. In fact, we're surprised when we don't hear God. I've been praying, I can't get God. What's going on? Because we're expecting God to deliver. I'm no longer surprised when I go, aha. Of course, the aha moments we get, those little moments of clarity, it's no longer, oh my God. At the beginning, it's that way. After a while, we're in the sunlight of the Spirit. That's how it operates. It contradicts the way we normally operate, the way what my mind says I'm supposed to operate, all because I'm practicing fidelity to God, all because I'm seeking God at any cost, at any length, no matter what that looks like. It's none of my business. I need to keep walking that way. And suddenly, people who want to be around me are around me. Overcoming adversity, difficult times, whatever it might be, being there for people. For the most part, treating people with love and respect doesn't have to mean we're friends, just love and respect, because that's how I want to be treated. God has given me a servant's heart. My whole life is one of service. It's one of invitation. My dad doesn't get it. My brothers really don't get it. Marion gets it. I get it. My friends get it because we're all on the same ship. Which means I try to take it out there. And when I see homeless people on a corner, a $5 or $10 bill out of my pocket, thank you, God's not going to break me. Mary and I do, it just came to, you know those things that just come to you? You can't think about it. God says go and gives you the words or the actions. My home group, we take 95 South, and we usually get off at this exit Sunrise. We come to the top of the hill. There's homeless people there all the time. So I'm driving one time, and I had like a $20 bill. It's not going to kill me. They might use it for drugs. They might use it for alcohol. They might use it for food. That's none of my business. It's one of God's kids. And what really breaks my heart, that person who reeks, maybe has some emotional difficulties, maybe full-blown addict, I don't know. At one point, I'm sure it was the cutest baby on the block, and Mama was going, this is mine. Something happened. I don't know. And if I really think about it, as twisted up as that person is, God's going, it's still the cutest baby on the block. They just lost their way. They need to come home to me. What am I doing about this if I'm really living in the world of the Spirit? Huh? When no one's around, I'm on 95, just me and Marion in the car. And we roll up to this guy, and I roll down the window, and something comes out of my mouth. I says, what's your name? And they just stopped. I says, I'm Peter. This is before I was married. This is my girlfriend, Marion. And he just looked in, and he said, my name is Mike, or whatever. In that moment, I experienced something that was unbelievable. I saw someone's soul through their eyes. For a brief moment, they were treated like a person. God allowed me to give this person just a little bit of dignity for a very short time. What's your name? And he replied his name. Marion said, God bless you. Do you need to go to, if you're ready to 12-step the guy, you ready to want to go to AA? And it was a matter of maybe 40 seconds. Because you can't misagree. If you hesitate at a green light in South Florida 95, they want to kill you. Because all of you guys are down there driving, ruining everything. But anyway, you know, since I've been in Florida, it's really weird. I'm from New York and New Jersey. I lived in Florida 11 years. When the snowbirds come down, I go, friggin' Northeast people, they're all down here now. And so we just a short time with this guy, and we drove away, and we looked at each other and says, oh my God. Did you see the look in that person's eyes for a brief moment? They didn't feel dirty. They didn't feel ashamed. For me, that's really living in the world of the Spirit. Now, I'm not taking any credit for that. Please don't think that. I'm not trying to look what I did. But I'm trying to brag about this power called God that takes a wretch like me who was a homeless bum who'd only consume with me. All I could think about was me all the time. Let's not talk about you. Let's talk about me. What do you think of me? And we get to do things like that. So I'm not surprised. When I first started practicing Step 11, there was a woman who taught me about meditation. She wasn't an AA member. And she belonged to an ashram and met my sponsors, and she wanted to teach me. And she taught me very, very basic stuff. She put me on a 2-minute timer. She showed me posture, showed me breath. It's sad because it's one of the first disciplines that many of us lose is meditation, especially at night. And she showed me how to sit in posture. I couldn't do that lotus thing, but she gave me a posture to sit in. And now I have in my house a whole prayer spot with the mat and this cushion on top of it, and I sit what looks like a triangle, and it's quite comfortable, and I sit at length now. But at the beginning it was a 2-minute time, and here's the thing, going in, trying to get into silence, I touched how much noise is in this head. You know, you get a phone call and the TV's on really loud, you talk over the TV. Or maybe it's a crowded room and you get a call and you're trying to navigate through all that noise. You say, let me step outside. And you go, wow, that was noisy now. Or that TV was on loud when you shut it off. When I go into meditation, I'm going, oh my God, I'm walking around with all of the stuff, the chatter of 1,000 voices, with all plans and designs, ideas, attitudes, and emotions, itinerary, all the stuff. They're arguing with each other, and I'm trying to be spiritual and calm. So I get forced into face my own demons, and 2 minutes felt like an eternity. And 2 minutes became 3 minutes, and 4 minutes, and 5 minutes, and I start to get some traction in that, where the soul calls to go do that. And so my current practice is, in the morning, I work with the Lord's. I love our Lord's Prayer. I say the Serenity Prayer, I say the third-step prayer, the seven-step prayer. They center me. Not to change God, but to be changed by Him. I pray for a whole bunch of folks. I pray for the suffering in the world right now. I've been doing that for a long time. Somewhere in the middle of COVID, when I was getting on my political high horse and pointing fingers at people. These people got it wrong, my party's right, it's a conspiracy, it's all this stuff. Whether that's true or not, none of my business. I would get on my white horse, draw the sword, I'm going to go right in the middle of it, And I said, okay, this has to stop. And I start just praying for suffering that's going on in the world. People die because of this thing called COVID. People are dying. The world's basically at war right now. We're at war in our own country. Even a gun hasn't been fired, left against right. I need to pray for peace. And my prayer is, God, I hope everyone finds their way to you because we'd have no more problems. So I pray for suffering. I pray for friends. Jimmy's daughter just had a newborn baby. Offer prayers for her and his kids. Mary and I do a lot of praying. We're religious. We're connected with our church, so we do a lot of that stuff in the morning. Sometimes we pray together. Sometimes we pray separate. And we go into meditation. And I don't have enough time to share with you about how that has evolved, but I can tell you this. The practice of prayer and meditation and how God feeds the soul and gives you those experiences He's given me I'm with you. I hear you. I got you, and gives you something when the ground's fertile, knowing that I'm known by my Creator. And then sometimes, to be quite frank with you, I walk into a home group, I walk into a meeting, and I sit down, and sometimes it just bursts upon you like, oh my God, I'm sober this long. I'm 34. How did I make 34? Oh my God. I was living in a hallway not too long ago. I wanted to die. My dad and I get along really well. I've just gotten so much respect watching my dad age for him. As a kid, he said, head up and shoulder square no matter what. You'll face adversity. He's facing a lot. He's doing it head up and shoulder square. He's grouchy. He still smokes a cigarette like he's 18 on a corner. He still thinks he's Robert De Niro. Calls Robert De Niro a sissy. That's my dad. But I just watched this guy going through his stuff. Fearless. And, I'm married to a woman I absolutely adore. And I have friends who I go to the wall with. I've been overpaid in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I chop wood and carry water. That's all I do. That's all God wants me to do. I don't have to say anything that's going to revolutionize anyone's life. Anything I say has been given to me by God or by you anyway. I just get to experience the information and have a transformation. So for this, I'm very grateful. I hope to stay teachable and pass this message on with the same love and gratitude that you give it to me every time I walk into an AA meeting and say, my name is Peter, I'm an alcoholic. That's all I got.